Ford Territory Titanium, a well-priced compact crossover that gives you all the bells and whistles you would typically find in a luxury car. And there may be a growing number of crossovers at this price point, but considering everything you get with this, it's really going to be hard to beat. Wow, nice ride, bro.
It's the all-new Chery Tiggo 7 Pro.
Is it as good on the inside as it is on the outside?
Even better, bro. It's got all the bells and whistles that you'd expect from a luxury vehicle.
Wow, I think this has just met its match. Wishful thinking to get a decent compact crossover in the neighborhood of 1.3 million pesos, let alone one that offers you every creature comfort you could possibly want in a modern automobile. But the best part is now you have quite a few to choose from, and today we get to compare two of them. Presenting the Ford Territory Titanium and the Chery Tiggo 7 Pro. What we have here are two compact crossovers that redefine what value for money means. Both these crossovers are relatively affordable and are packed with heaps of tech and features. And the similarities don't end there, because when you look at their performance numbers, these two are neck and neck. Now, it may be tough to call, but let's find out if one is better than the other. So let's start with the exterior, and these two may look different, but they're pretty much the same in the way that they're spec'd out. Both get LED headlights and DRLs, power folding side mirrors, and LED taillights. Sadly, both have fake exhausts. In terms of styling, the Ford Territory looks a bit more stocky, thanks to its wider stance and bulging fenders. It also has more radical lines, giving it a less fluidic look, especially at the back. And then on the other hand, you have the Chery Tiggo 7 Pro that sports a cleaner, more conservative look. Overall, its styling may be more subdued, but it still manages to be quite striking. Now, looks are subjective, so I'll let you guys decide which one looks better. Please leave a comment below so we know which one appeals to most of you. In terms of size, the Ford Territory is longer and wider, but this is a little bit taller. So let's see what that translates to when it comes to interior space. You'll see that both offer pretty decent cargo space. The Tiggo 7 Pro gives you 475 liters with the seats up and 1,500 liters with the seats folded. The Territory, on the other hand, has 420 liters with the seats up and 1,120 liters with the seats folded. So there's decent space for luggage, but what about the passengers? Well, let's find out. The interior of the Chery Tiggo 7 Pro is breathtakingly gorgeous. And even if the design is simple, Chery really knocked it out of the park with their choice of materials and its fit and finish. Everything feels solid and snug. Nothing feels flimsy. You get power seats, dual-zone automatic climate control, a wireless charge pad, a digital instrument cluster, and an electronic park brake with auto hold. Even this gear selector is electronic, so aside from giving this interior a modern and upscale vibe, the absence of a linkage also allows more storage space underneath the center console. Then we move to this 10.25-inch infotainment screen, which uses MirrorLink for Android and CarPlay for iOS devices. But this really raises the bar with its 360 camera. Because aside from giving you multiple angles and a 3D view, it's just so crisp and clear. Definitely one of the best, if not the best in its class. In terms of ergonomics, everything is well within reach and strategically placed. And while physical switches and buttons would make the AC easier to operate, it doesn't take too long to learn to use this without looking. Overall, there really isn't anything more you could ask for with the T7 Pro's interior. It simply offers heaps of comfort, generous space and features that can go head to head with the creme de la creme of crossovers. And with niceties like ambient lighting and a panoramic sunroof, this is going to be really hard to match. But let's see how the Ford Territory compares. This interior is definitely on par when it comes to wow factor. One glance at this interior already tells you that this has a lot to offer in the tech and features department. I don't even know where to begin, but like the Tiggo 7 Pro, you also get power seats, dual zone automatic climate control, a wireless charge pad, a digital instrument cluster, and an electronic park brake with auto hold. Even the infotainment screens are comparable in size, and this also has a 360 camera. But it's worth noting that the picture quality in the one in the Tiggo 7 is a notch better. However, this comes standard with Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay. But aside from that, this also has heated and cooled seats and also comes with an automatic dimming rear view mirror. And those additional features may be considered trivial, but that's not where it ends, because this also comes with the best safety suite in its class. You get adaptive cruise control with forward collision warning, autonomous emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, and enhanced active park assist, although I'd rather do the parking all by myself. So it's also a tech fest in here, but it's worth noting that the gear selector in this is conventional, while the one in the Chery Tiggo 7 is electronic, so that gives it a bit more of an upscale and premium vibe. But this conventional gear selector definitely is not an issue for me. But what is an issue for me is when it comes to perceived quality. Overall, this cabin feels solid and well built. But when you look at the finer details, you start to think otherwise. Take these vents for instance. They feel really flimsy and cheap. And yes, that may be nitpicking, but when it comes to ergonomics, it's primarily let down by the fact that you do not have any physical buttons for the main functions of your automatic climate control. It has to be operated by the touchscreen. In fact, the only buttons you get for your AC would be the on and off switch and the automatic mode. It would be neat if they could have the fan speed and temperature speed controlled manually or physically, but all that has to be done through the touchscreen, which can be a bit of a pain, especially while you're driving. And whether or not you get acclimated or used to that is really up to you. But overall, the Territory still has an exceptional interior, offering superior space and comfort, and that's regardless of where you sit. And since this also has niceties like ambient lighting and a panoramic sunroof, you'll be pampering yourself regardless of which of these crossovers you decide to sit in. But can we say the same when it comes to the driving experience? Well, let's find out. And since I'm already in the Ford Territory, let's start with this one. When you compare spec sheets of this, the Ford Territory, with the Tiggo 7 Pro, I bet you'll have some difficulty trying to determine which one is better. Because on paper, they're almost identical. So they both come with a 1.5 liter turbocharged engine, which are both mated to a CVT, and their curb weights are exactly the same. Yes, exactly the same. 1,465 kilograms, if I'm not mistaken. And then in terms of power output, they're almost identical as well. But specifically, this produces 141 horsepower and 225 Newton meters of torque. So what does that translate to behind the wheel? Well, there's no denying that this is a CVT. It definitely feels like one. So I'm flooring it now, and there is a bit of that drone and that rubber band effect. But since this has pretty decent torque, it kind of offsets it a bit, especially in the mid-range. But my biggest complaint with this is really with the steering feel. It's just so light. And I know that's great when you're maneuvering or trying to park this thing, but when you're traveling at speed, it actually feels a little unnerving. And the fact that you need to hold it a bit firmer means that it requires more effort on the part of the driver. So ironically, even if it's lighter, it feels more exhausting to drive, if that makes any sense. And another disadvantage of that is you can never tell where the wheels are pointing. There's hardly any feedback. So it makes the car feel a little bigger than it actually is, even if the ratio isn't that bad. But when it comes to everything else, comfort, NVH, visibility, there really isn't anything to complain about. this provides an extremely pleasant drive. So I mentioned earlier that this pretty much has the same power output as what you get in the Ford Territory. In fact, the power difference is quite negligible, because with this you get 145 horsepower and 210 Newton meters of torque. So you get slightly more horsepower, but slightly less torque. Now the difference may seem negligible on paper, but behind the wheel, it's a different story. Because for whatever reason, this just feels a bit more alive in the way that it accelerates and responds to your throttle inputs. Which is kind of odd because they actually also weigh the same. But let me show you. But the T7 Pro's greatest advantage over the Territory isn't even with its power delivery. It's actually with the steering feel. Because this is also light, but it gives a decent amount of feedback and you always know where the wheels are pointing. Now it's not sporty, but for what it is, this is weighted perfectly. And the ratio is pretty responsive too. So together with this car's handling dynamics, it's a great package. And the quick steering ratio has a number of advantages. Aside from being quick to respond to your steering inputs, it also gives you the impression that the car is smaller, which actually gives you more confidence behind the wheel. Not to mention, a bit more fun. But when it comes to the overall package, in terms of ride comfort, NVH, and simply how easy it is to drive, you won't be disappointed with either this or the Territory. They're both extremely satisfying to drive. The Chery Tiggo 7 Pro can be yours for 1,198,000 pesos, while the Ford Territory Titanium is yours for 1,310,000 pesos.
And considering everything that you get for both of these vehicles, they both offer an exceptional value for money.
But it's hard to dismiss the fact that there's a difference of over 100,000 pesos between these two vehicles.
But the question is this worth the extra dough?
Well, I guess the safety suite and additional goodies is enough to justify the price difference. But you can't really say that this is lacking when it comes to safety. And besides, I feel it drives better. So I guess the choice is clear, at least for me.